Right. Well, welcome everyone. It's lovely to see you, especially if you are ECS staff, and I know 2 or 3 of you are here today, so special welcome to you. Whoever you are, whether you're academics, sports staff, welfare staff, house parents, whatever, this is a session for everybody, or it's intended to be for everybody who's going to be working in our schools this summer, or in summer schools anywhere in the UK or elsewhere for that matter. So just a quick recap. Why go green in the first place? Well, as indicated by the publicity for this session, we have an opportunity to make a fresh start post-COVID. And the publicity blurb said something along the lines of, welcome your students back to a fresh start with an optimistic outlook on the future. And the green agenda can sometimes be slightly dismal, but what we can do as schools is to work on the positives, and we can make a difference. We can make a positive difference, and that's what I'm hoping to show today. We want to make the most of the summer. If people are coming over to the UK, we have an opportunity to get out of classrooms, get out of the school, go out on excursions and so on, all making the most of the situation in the UK. And lots of that out of class activity can be touched by the green agenda. Also, we're responsible. That's a deliberately ambiguous statement. You probably know that we're in a bit of a mess in terms of climate and ecology worldwide. And we in the UK are responsible. Historically, we're responsible in the West for most of the emissions, although there are other countries now that emit more than Europe. But historically, we are absolutely responsible for the situation we find ourselves in. But we are also responsible people, particularly as educators. We're adults, we're grown-ups. And so once we see something that isn't working, or we see a problem that's affecting people, then we have a responsibility to do something about it. So we're responsible people, we react to the situations, we try to do what we can. Education is of course about the future. Whether we're working with children, teenagers, adults, we're always talking about preparing people for a better future for themselves. But we also have the opportunity to create a better future for people generally through our work and through our actions. So education is a good place to help try to create a better future. And then we have an opportunity on an institutional level to nudge the dial towards doing more good than harm. Almost any field of human activity has harmful side effects. And what we do in the summer is no different. So for example, we have students flying to us. Most of them, in our case, can't get to us other than by aeroplane. And that has a harmful side effect, as we all know. But there are lots of other things that we can do to begin to mitigate against the harm that's caused by doing good in some areas, or trying to do more good or less harm. So we go green to try to nudge the dial further towards doing more good than harm. So how are we going to do that today? Well, in general terms, in education, we can use our influence. We can use our influence with the staff who come on our courses. We can use our influence with the pupils or students who join our schools. So that is probably the most important thing that as educators we can do to advance the green agenda and make a positive contribution to the future by using our influence positively with the people around us. And then the second area is in reduction and conservation. As I mentioned, all human operations have negative side effects, but we can reduce these side effects. So I'll be looking at how we can reduce consumption, for example, and conserve energy and water. In looking at this, I'm going to talk in 3 broad areas. I'm going to look at what we can do on the recreation side of our summer schools, what we can do on the academic side, and what we can do with as regards welfare and administration. So not everything that you're watching will be relevant to your area, but there's obviously considerable overlap. And this is going to be a fairly information-heavy presentation. I just wanted to concentrate on getting the information out there. Don't feel you need to keep taking screenshots or furiously note-taking or anything like that, because at the end of the presentation, I will give you a link to the deck of slides, which contains everything that you're seeing so far. And I want to concentrate on simple, easy actions. I mean, there are lots of things institutionally that organizations can do to be greener. But today I just wanted to concentrate on simple, easy things that we can all do on our schools this summer. And I guess this little illustration explains why I want to concentrate on simple, easy things. It can all feel a bit daunting sometimes. How do we run schools which have zero environmental impact? Well, apart from nudging the dial over, as I mentioned earlier, we can take lots of small steps, and they're all doable and simple, but lots of small steps can get us further along. In this case, it's referring to shopping, but of course, we're talking about ultimately zero impact English language teaching. Okay, so starting with the recreation program. Here are some ideas. Excursions. You may already have planned excursions, you may not, you may be refining them, but think about taking students to environmental exhibitions. There are lots of them, and Google is on top of most of them. So just Google where you're going, look for environmental exhibitions, and include them in your excursion if you can. Likewise, there are opportunities to get out to the Great British Countryside. It's an incredible, I hesitate to say resource, the English countryside, but people are traveling. Partly one of the reasons people travel from other countries to this one in the summer is because it's green and beautiful. So let's make the most of that and make sure that one way or another we're getting our students out into the countryside, and not just, for example, out on shopping trips to cities. Likewise, there may be parks around your school, or there may be parks in the places you're going to. Make the most of them. I'll give one example for that. We generally do an excursion to the city of Bath, and the kids in our case, they want to get to the shops, of course. We try to include an element of culture, maybe by doing an open top bus tour, something like that, with a bit of historical and cultural sort of input. But this time we've decided, okay, we're going to drop off all of our students in a nice park called Victoria Park overlooking Bath. Have a look at the, enjoy the cool of the park up there. It's a very wooded, beautiful spot with lovely views over Bath. And the idea is then that we'll walk our students down into Bath. So we're starting in a nice place. And likewise with pickup points, if you can arrange for students once they've been somewhere to assemble in some lovely green park, it will just have the effect of sort of making the most of what's there, but also just giving students the opportunity to appreciate a little bit of greenery whilst they're out on their excursions. You're probably going to want to do some kind of induction tour, particularly with new students. Lots of new students after 2 years in our case of being closed. People who won't be familiar with your campus, with the local town, etc. So you're going to want to do an induction tour, and if you can, try to include eco elements in that. We are fortunate enough to be running our courses within a big, very green campus, but within a school that, as a year-round school, is very is like us, very committed to environmental responsibility. So it's relatively easy for us because we can generally persuade somebody from the school to take our students around, and they'll show them the solar panels on the roofs and the beehives and the bird nests and all sorts of things that they're doing within the school. So do talk to your host school about what they're doing, or university campus, or wherever you're hosting, wherever you're running your courses. Try to find out what the residential accommodation is doing in terms of the eco agenda, and communicate that to your students. It's a golden opportunity. And then there are all sorts of kind of quizzes. Quizzes are a fairly established part of most recreation programs. And I'm going to show you one, and I may or may not flick over to the right Chrome screen here. So let's have a look. Excellent. I hope everybody can see that. Joe, please shout if you can't. So here's an example of a kind of quiz that you could do with groups of students, and this could either be in the classrooms or it might be on your social activity program. So we could just have a quick go at it. So let's start with our food here. And the idea is to try to work out the correct order of these in terms of environmental impact. So do you think that the most important thing with regard to food is eating a plant-heavy diet, or throwing away less food, or cooking over clean stoves, or composting your waste? So what you might do, for example, if you've got students in quiz groups, you might show them the task like this, and you might say, okay, you've got 2 minutes to discuss this together, to think about it, and then I want you to put them in the right order: first, second, third, fourth. And you would let them do that, and they would give you their answers, and you would then show them the correct answer. So if you'd like to put into chat which you think is the most impactful. Okay, Alex thought eat a plant-heavy diet first. Eleftheria, you thought throw away less food. Okay, let's put that there. What about between composting and clean stoves? Okay, Joe thinks composting. Okay, fine. So that's, I mean, obviously this is, it doesn't make a lot of sense in the way that we're doing this, but if you had groups of students, then they could come up with their own answer: first, second, third, fourth, and then you could just show them their answers. So we didn't rank any of these in the correct place, but here is the correct order. So throwing away less food is the most impactful thing. It's similar to taking 548 million cars off the road. This was back in 2019. Eating a plant-heavy diet is similar to taking 513 million cars off the road. This is if everybody did it, I guess, in this survey. And you get the idea. So there are other parts in the quiz: how we move people and goods. Is it better to drive an electric car, or fly less, or invest in high-speed trains? In our homes and cities, is it better to install green roofs or switch to LED bulbs? How we use our land: should we be planting more bamboo, returning land to indigenous people? And you can try all of this afterwards if you're interested. It's not as obvious as you might think. But there, switching back for a minute, and I hope I'm back on the PowerPoint now. There's a link there, and you can follow that up and either build it into the social program, maybe a quiz that might include an eco element, or into your classes. And then sports. Sports obviously take place outdoors, and hopefully in a greenish, coolish environment. And there's an opportunity here, again, to try to connect our students a little bit with the outdoors through sports. So let's not just turn up on the football field and immediately start playing football. How about sitting down on the sports field first and doing a few sort of yoga type stretching and relaxation exercises, which might include, for example, lying down, taking a few deep breaths, and just listening to the surroundings, just being aware of the surroundings, of the wind and the noise of the wind in the trees, or wherever you are, but use sports as an opportunity to help people to connect with their surroundings rather than just being in it. Okay, and here we've got some students who were relaxing, obviously not as part of sports, but when we take our students out of the classroom at English country schools, we always try to have an element of relaxation first. The students enjoy it. They calm down a bit, because obviously doing anything new can be a bit exciting, and it's good to sort of calm the level a little bit. But it also gives us that opportunity to connect students with their surroundings. Other ideas for the recreation program: walks. Very simple, countryside walks. If you wanted to make an entire sort of language learning project out of this, you could bring maps into the classroom, or use online maps and let students plan their own walk, and then lead the walk as well, obviously with adults in attendance if we're talking about children. But students love doing this, and it's a great, they love taking the initiative and setting their own directions, and getting lost quite often as well, and we allow that to a certain extent, and it's fun. They really enjoy it. If you're going on walks, then you can do various kind of awareness activities. So depending on the age of the children, there's sort of I Spy with my little eye, something beginning with S. Is it sky? Yes, it's a sky. Well done. Okay. You can also do I hear with my little ear, etc. Same idea. I hear with my little ear, something beginning with A. Is it animals? No. Oh, it's an aeroplane. Right. That kind of stuff. You can also do a silent walk. This is something that we've done at ECS for many years, and it always works brilliantly. So as part of a countryside walk, again with younger children, say, okay, for the next 2 minutes, we're going to walk without saying anything. We're going to walk as quietly as we can. And you could have a little sort of sanction for anybody who breaks the silence, as they do. And some kids will deliberately break the silence to start with because they just want to do 10 press-ups or whatever your sanction is. But after a while, you just say, okay, fine, we've all had a bit of fun. Now let's just walk silently for 2 minutes. And at the end, I just want you to tell me what you heard, what you felt, what you smelt, what you saw. And when we do that at the end of 2 minutes and sit everybody down and ask them those questions, it's remarkable how much language comes back. And the children really, really enjoy it. It's a kind of mindfulness activity, I suppose. But it works great every time. And it's simple, there's no preparation. It's just something nice and easy for you to do. Likewise, a blindfold walk, you can put blindfolds on people, you can make a train of like 6 or 8 people, a blindfold round the person at the front, and then hands over the eyes of the next person. So you have like a little sort of train of children all with their hands over the eyes of the person in front. And you can then have one student giving instructions. So, okay, go straight on, turn left, go over the bridge. Obviously, you need to be careful because you don't want people being led into ponds or into areas where they might do themselves a mischief. So it needs supervision. But again, it's just a very simple, enjoyable activity. Nature art. Really, really simple again. Provide pupils with large pieces of paper, maybe some string, scissors, glue, and then just ask them to go out and collect interesting objects that they can find in nature. So they have to be natural objects. So they might be leaves, they might be bits of flowers, they might be twigs, small pebbles, whatever. Bring them back and arrange them into a nature drawing. You might need to set a few ground rules in terms of, you know, okay, don't go and pick all the wildflowers. But that aside, they really enjoy it. They're very creative, and you don't really need any parameters other than go and find some things and create something that's beautiful. You can then put up those nature art, the results of their artwork around the boarding houses or the classroom or wherever. So a nice simple way of decorating and bringing nature back inside as well. If you're doing drawing or painting, drawing is a fantastic activity. It takes ages. Everybody enjoys it, and it's so simple. You know, just provide a few crayons, pencils, some paper, maybe clipboards to rest on. Go out somewhere beautiful, preferably. You know, sit under a nice tree in the shade, and everybody will choose what they want to draw. And the very process of looking carefully at something and drawing it becomes a sort of meditative process. And it's just a great way of connecting individuals with nature again. And I should stress that we're looking at process, not product. So, you know, the process is what's important, the looking carefully and getting it down onto paper. We're not interested so much in whether it's a great work of art that results. Some will be better than others, but you know, I'm a hopeless artist, for example, but if somebody said to me, I'm not interested in what your drawing looks like at the end, I only want to be sure that you've seen everything in the picture, whether that's different colors or different elements of what you can see. And then, as I said before, bring the results back in to decorate the school, the classroom, the boarding houses, wherever. All kinds of hunts that you can do in the outdoors, scavenger hunts. I probably don't need to explain, but sort of like find a feather, find something prickly, find something smooth, that kind of thing. If you just Google scavenger hunt, you'll find loads of ideas. Likewise, color hunt, really, really simple, especially with younger children. Give them a load of colors, say, go and find something that is this color. And it doesn't mean that they have to pick a purple flower, for example, and bring it back. Nearly all students these days have mobile phones. So if you don't want them picking the flowers, that's fine. Go and find it, take a photograph of it with your mobile phone, bring that back to the base as evidence that you found it. And if you wanted to make that a bit more linguistic, you could ask them exactly where they took the photograph. Yeah, so I've mentioned photos. You can use photography quite a lot. I'll come back to that a little bit later. And then very simple things. How many different trees can you find within this designated area, whether it's a campus or a park or whatever? How many different flowers can you find? Again, we're not looking for people to pick the flowers, maybe to photograph them as evidence that they have found different flowers. How many different kinds of leaves? Likewise, leaves, I guess you could ask them to bring back as evidence that they found them. And you could leave it there. You could just say, yeah, great, well done, you found 20 leaves. Or you could then photograph the leaves, run them through Google Photos, and that will identify which the leaves are. And if the kids haven't already done that, they'll find that really interesting and fascinating, that you can very quickly and easily find out the name of any tree, flower, or leaf just by photographing it and running it through Google Photos. And then as part of your recreation program, well worth looking at films. We like to show films, I guess, as part of our social program on courses. So why not have a look at films that have an environmental angle? And these don't have to be, you know, doomsday scenario films. There are lots of sort of, you know, children's cartoon type films which have a very positive environmental angle. There's a link there for you, which I can't easily put into chat, I'm afraid, but it will be included in the slide deck at the end of this presentation. And finally, outdoor games and activities. There's a little booklet. It's on the Green Action ELT website, but there is the direct link to it. And if you just want to do some outdoor games and activities with all age groups, actually, then that's a fantastic little booklet and resource that you can use to include these things in your program. Right, I did say this was going to be information heavy, so I hope you're still with me. Moving on quickly to admin and welfare. Plastic reduction. If you haven't already started reducing plastic on your course, it's not too late. Does your school or residence provide plastic cups, for example? Could you ask them not to? Could they provide glass cups instead, or could they provide water fountains? Likewise, sandwich bags, could they be replaced with paper bags instead? Water bottles, we provide our students with a water bottle when they arrive, and we expect them to use that and only that until they go. We don't like to see students coming back from shopping trips with water bottles, for example, because they should have taken their own water bottle with them. But if you haven't yet ordered your own branded water bottles, it's a great opportunity to spread awareness of your brand. But if you haven't yet done that, then why not challenge students to a competition? Ask them to bring the water bottle into the office, and you can sign it in permanent marker and take a photograph of it, maybe date it. So, and then for the student who manages to hang on to their water bottle for the 2 weeks or the 4 weeks or however long they're with you, you could give them some kind of a prize if they manage to use the same water bottle throughout their stay. Tote bags are a good idea as well. Tote bags, I had to look up the definition because I wasn't too sure what tote meant, but it just means everything. So a bag that they can put everything in. So if they're going out shopping, if you provide students with a bag or a rucksack, then they're in a position to refuse plastic or plastic bags when they're offered by shops. So they can just use their tote bag instead of accepting a new plastic bag. And tote bags, rucksacks, water bottles, all, as I mentioned, provide an opportunity for the organization to spread brand awareness. If you're out with students in Bath and they've all got rucksacks with, your institution's logo on the back, that's great, because there are loads of foreign students out in Bath or London or Oxford or Cambridge or wherever, or at least there were in 2019. We'll see what this summer's like. But it's a great opportunity to spread awareness of your brand to other foreign students who are in the locality. Food is a big area. It's important to the students. And quite a lot of waste, in my experience at least, is produced. So think about how you can encourage students to waste less food. And that could be as simple as during induction, reminding them to, take a reasonable sized portion from the start, and then checking with the organization who are providing the food that it's then okay for students to come back for seconds or even thirds if they're still hungry. As long as students feel that they're able to come back to get some more if they can, then they're not going to pile food onto their plate with the possibility of them not finishing the food and wasting it. And some students could do with a little bit of friendly training on this. So you might have somebody whose job it is during the first few days of eating to just keep an eye on students and find those who have a tendency to pile their plates high and to waste it. And there are always some. Just have a quiet word with them, just explain that it's not necessary. And going meat-free. I guess that these days, well, there are plenty of vegetarians amongst our students, aren't there? Children, teenagers, adults. There are more and more vegans as well. So you need to be taking that into account in the food that you provide. Some people say, okay, let's have a meat-free Monday, for example, and we've tried it. There are always some people who say, oh, I want meat. So we said, okay, we're not going to tell them when we do a meat-free day. And nobody noticed. So if you want a top tip from me today, if you're going to do a meat-free day or days, don't tell the students. wait for them to notice, and chances are they won't, and they'll be just as happy with what they're provided with as on days that include meat. Travel advice. This is a big area, isn't it? And I mentioned the harmful side effects of flights earlier on. But if we're to run our schools this summer, people have to get to them. In my opinion, education is a good reason to travel. If you have to fly, then education is a good reason to fly. But as administrators, it's not too late to send out some travel advice to students or to students' parents. Travel by train if possible, obviously. Sometimes that's just not possible. You know, for younger students, for example, it's just not going to work unless they're accompanied by adults. But for adult students, definitely, you know, travel by train if possible, maybe give some incentives. Everyone take direct flights if possible. Most of the impact of flying is on takeoff and landing. Most of the carbon impact is on takeoff and landing. So if students choose flights that connect, then that kind of more or less doubles the carbon impact of their journey each way. So take direct flights if possible. Choose UM. UM is unaccompanied minor. Regrettably, a lot of airlines, including British Airways, have stopped providing the UM service. We can see how that works for the airlines, because if parents want their children to come to England, they now have to accompany them. So the airline gets, you know, 2 passengers instead of 1. But if your parents are able to find airlines that still offer the UM service, then use it rather than accompanying the children. And I know that's something that our educational association is trying to lobby on as well. And the travel advice is to fly economy. It needs to be expressed fairly carefully, and I think we say something along the lines of, we understand that when you're traveling long distances, you may prefer the extra comfort of premium, what we call it, it's not business, premium, anyway, whatever it's called, business or premium class. But we say if you can, fly economy, and everybody flying economy has a smaller carbon footprint. Because when you're flying business, you use up more space. So space that could be taken up by 2 people, for example, is taken up by 1. So flying outside economy class is more impactful. And if you are offsetting flights, then it's worth finding out from your students, did they fly economy, did they fly business? Because you need to take that into account when you're offsetting. And then finally, encourage your students to pack light. It's not too late to do that. We're often amazed by the weight of suitcases that children arrive on the course with. And we haven't done an in-depth investigation into why their suitcases are so heavy. Perhaps that's something we should do. But just a general request to pack light. Leave out heavy items unless you really, really need them. Yeah, and then finally, from an admin and welfare point of view, if you're a house parent, try to encourage your students to use less water and electricity. If you can measure usage, then go ahead and do that. It's always useful to know whether you're improving or not. Remember, you need to link usage to the number of students. So if we only have half the number of students this year compared to 2019, then we shouldn't be patting ourselves on the back that we have halved our energy usage. We should be more than halving our energy usage. So try to measure in terms of the number of students. But if you can't measure, for example, if you don't have access to the water meter readings or the electricity meter readings, don't use that as a reason not to do it. You can still encourage everybody to use less water and electricity with signs and posters. So, you know, over wash basins, for example, you might have little signs that say, you know, switch off the tap whilst you're brushing your teeth. or don't leave the tap running, or take shorter showers, or whatever it is. And don't just say that, but back it up in your conversations with students, because it may not be immediately obvious to students why they're being asked to do that. So use every opportunity you have to have discussions with the students and explain to them why you're asking these things. For example, that about a third of British rivers in the southeast are being damaged because water is having to be abstracted for people's gardens, etc. So do try to explain the reasons for your conservation measures, and electricity as well. And whilst we're on the subject of posters, these are, I don't know how clearly you can see these, but these are two absolutely wonderful posters produced by one of our volunteers, who may even be here today, actually, called Helen Kind. And I'm going to take these out and get them made up into big A2 posters and put them around the boarding houses, because they just provide a wonderful way into discussions. You could just ask students to pick any section of either of these and try and have a discussion around that. And I'm sure there's much to be said on the basis of these. Yeah, again, continuing with admin and welfare, search engines, and this is obviously straying over into the academic side as well. Rather than having Google as a default search engine, try Ecosia, where they plant a tree, or they plant trees, depending on the number of searches people make. Ekoru, which is I think it's based on the oceans, and Give Water, which actually Give Water is the oceans one. Excuse me, I'm going to skip over Ikoru. I looked at it the other day, but it's gone out of my head. But you can Google those, and if you like the look of them, then replace the automatic Google default search engine with them, and you can do a little bit of good every time somebody searches for something. And one of Helen's ideas was, why not put different search engines, different eco search engines on different terminals to give a bit of variety and to spread awareness each time people do a search. In the office and in the academic environment, think about the equipment, monitor brightness. If you turn down the brightness of the monitor a bit, nobody's going to notice, but it will use less energy. And you can set the sleep timer to come on after excuse me, 5 minutes, rather than having monitors, sort of burning away and using lots of energy and getting very hot as well in the process, and then requiring more energy to cool the buildings down. In boarding houses, I suggest you put a suggestion box, a green suggestion box. And in your discussions and conversations with students, so just be open with them. Say, look, you may notice things, you may notice areas where there's waste or where we can do better. Please put your suggestions as to what we can do to be greener in the box, and then regularly take out the suggestions, talk them through with people, and take it on from there. And finally, green lead. Joe, who introduced us today, thank you, Joe, has recently written a really interesting article about being green lead in her school and how it works. And hopefully that'll be on the Green Action ELT website before too long. Your green lead doesn't just have to be a member of staff, it could be a student. Why not? Find a student who seems to be interested, make them a green lead so that they can continue thinking about things, talking to other students, and basically pushing the green agenda from the student side as well as the staff side. And you could even choose one person from each area to create a kind of green team. So you might have a green lead from admin welfare, a green lead from the academic team, a green lead from the activities team. And these people can meet up occasionally to say, okay, how are we doing? What are we doing? And perhaps having more than one person as a green lead might just sort of result in a few more ideas emerging, but whatever you do, have at least a green lead. Okay, moving swiftly on to the academic program now. Paper. Lots of paper traditionally has been used in summer schools, photocopying. Most schools are trying to limit the number of photocopies they make. It's expensive, but it's also wasteful in terms of paper. So if you are an academic manager, for example, then perhaps you could have a session bringing people together and just brainstorming alternatives to using paper. There are lots once you start thinking about it. Likewise, energy. Think about energy use in the academic environment, in classrooms. Make sure the lights are being switched off, make sure machines are not being left on unnecessarily. We talked about brightness, we talked about screensavers, etc. So just be aware of that and do not a full-scale audit, but just go around, with a green hat on from time to time, thinking, well, what can we do to use less energy? In teaching, there are lots of easy inclusion activities. So you don't have to be using course books that have, a unit on the environment, or even lots of units that have environmental bits in it. You might just have a fairly standard EFL type course book with fast food and fashion and pop and all the rest of it. There are always opportunities to establish a connection with the environment. And you can even turn it into a bit of a game. So if you're looking at fashion, for example, you can just ask students, okay, what's the connection to the planet here? What's the connection to the environment? And just about everything is connected to what we do, because this is where we are, this is our planet. So ask that, whatever the theme of your teaching for that lesson or that day, what's the connection to the environment? Ask yourself, ask your students, and turn that into a discussion. And then if you're dealing with big numbers, this is an idea from Harry Waters, who did a presentation for us a little while ago. I'm not going to say much more about that, except that there's great opportunity to bring environmental discussion around practice of big numbers. And I think next I give you, yeah, there you go. There's a link to Harry Waters' video. So at the end of this session, download the slide deck and you can follow that link. And Harry's 23-minute video will give you loads of ideas for easy inclusion activities, stuff that you can do on the environment without having to think too much about it. Oh, and Kath Bilsborough, who presented for us a few weeks ago. Again, lots more really simple, quick, easy ideas for including the environment in your teaching. And then here's a really simple one, Greentown. You could make this a lesson, you could make it a mini project. The question is, think about your hometown now and think about what your hometown might look like in an ideal future, or in a future in which we've made all the right decisions. And that will lead to quite a lot of nice imagination and positive envisioning. And possibly then you could start talking around separate areas. So for example, energy, how is energy being provided? What's happened with the environment? Have trees been planted? What's happened with transport? So it could fairly quickly, that simple question, imagine your town in a better future 20 years from now. That simple question can lead on to a lot of environmental discussion. But above all, if you have the opportunity, get out of the classroom, just get out of the classroom. You don't have to have anything planned outside the classroom, but if you've got an activity that you're going to do in the classroom, which you could just as easily do outside the classroom, and if it's a nice day, then just get out of the classroom, take them out. We find that as soon as we bring students outside the classroom, they are energized, and they focus better, particularly if we do a little bit of relaxation with them first. They're then energized, they focus better, they work just as well, if not better, than they do sort of cooped up in the classroom. So just go outside the classroom. It's nice for everyone. And I've included this photo here. Forgive me if you were here for my session a couple of months ago. But these are primary, well, what are they, about 9-year-olds, something like that. And the teacher there on the right came to the conclusion that they're spending far too much time on their mobile devices. So he said, right, we're just going to go out for half an hour a week. We're going to find somewhere nice and cool to sit down, and we're just going to read books for half an hour. You choose a book, you read it. They absolutely loved it. It was a really valuable activity, no preparation, but you couldn't say that that's not education. Now, language outdoors. I just want to quickly run through a few simple ideas. And again, forgive me if you were here a couple of months ago, but for those of you who are new to this, we can use the outdoors for practicing discrete language items. So what do you call, how do you spell? You can plan and go out on a walk while the students ask questions. So the students can ask you questions. What do you call that? Oh, that's called an oak tree. How do you spell oak tree? Oh, it's O-A-K tree, and so on. So really simple activity, no preparation required. Students will enjoy it, and it's just a vocabulary building exercise. Should and shouldn't. The country code in the UK includes things like leave gates the way you found them. Don't let your dog chase sheep, or your dog shouldn't chase sheep, and you shouldn't pick wildflowers, for example. So just get onto Google, print out the country code, make sure students understand it, and then go outside, and you could film it on a mobile phone. It's a really simple thing to do. We've got a bit of footage of children pretending to be sheep and a dog chasing them, and they were just having a great time, but the point was well made. There are any draw and describe a scene. So we talked about drawing earlier on as a nice, gentle, meditative activity for the activity program, but likewise, it's a really effective way of using language too. So if you have the time, and you can ask your classes to just go outside for half an hour or less than that, draw a scene, and then come back in and describe it to others, or describe, or write about it. Really simple and nice descriptive language. Describing location, you can make a plan of the school grounds. That's a really difficult activity. Sorry. Make a plan of the school grounds and involves some fairly high-level language if you're writing about it. So the school is approached by a long avenue lined with trees. That's a fairly sophisticated use of English. Comparison and contrast, all sorts of activities you can do in the environment for practicing comparison and contrast. Measuring trees, taller, shorter, wider, thinner, etc. Play poo sticks. You can race sticks in the river, or mine's going faster than yours. Here comes the first, which is second, etc. Compare and contrast leaves. So this one's round, this one's pointed, this one's bigger, this one's smaller. Insects, flowers, etc. So all sorts of language of comparison and contrast that can be used by just going outside the classroom. Describing colours and textures, we mentioned this earlier. Scavenger hunts, find something red, blue, smooth, furry, etc. Kim's nature game, once you've found maybe 10 or a dozen natural objects, cover them up, and you could either take one out and reveal it and ask students to tell you what's missing, or you can cover them and ask students to tell you as many of the things underneath as they can remember. Again, very, very simple, almost no preparation activity, which kids in particular really enjoy. And then I mentioned planning and going on a country walk. Have the students plan the walk. go on the walk as part of the activity program perhaps, and then come back and describe it. So first we walked across a bridge, then we saw a rabbit, then we went into a big field, etc., etc., etc. So again, a minimal preparation activity with lots of linguistic output. And prediction even, you could just go to somewhere and contemplate what the scene might look like in the future. So by 2035, the road will have disappeared, the trees will have been replanted, etc. Student-led walks, I've mentioned, they love them. So this is just by way of illustration. If you don't take your students out for countryside walks and you have the opportunity to do so, please do. If you're not in the countryside and you've got a park nearby, use the park. Trees and leaves, all kinds of activities. For further information, visit the Green Action ELT website. Again, the links will be in the slide deck. And, you know, if you only use trees and leaves as a resource, then you'll have quite a lot to go on. And that applies whether you're in, you know, city, countryside, wherever you are. Photography can be, you know, a very simple activity, as I mentioned earlier, like, you know, go out and photograph something blue, red, green, yellow, pink, whatever, or it can be a full-scale project. But it's a great way of getting kids out, focusing on things in their environment, both sort of macro, like, you know, wonderful countryside scenes, or micro, in this case, you know, just photographing a flower. But as soon as a student makes a choice to take a photograph, then they're expressing a connection already with what they're photographing. And there are lots of linguistic things that can come out of that as well. So if you want to know more about, for example, photography and a photography project, then have a look at the video of my session a couple of months ago, in which I talked in a lot more detail about that. Likewise, describe and draw activities. They can be quite sophisticated. And again, the video of my session a couple of weeks ago, again, describes in quite a lot of detail how we work our describe and draw activities. And then finally, meditation, again, in the same video, and I'm rushing over it because I'm aware that some people who are here were also at that session. So if you're interested in any of these ideas, please just watch the video. But there's a relatively simple activity where students listen to a nature meditation, which you can download from YouTube. And they then go outside the classroom with the intention of creating their own meditation. So, you know, walk across the grass. You're walking across the grass. In the distance, you can see an oak tree. Walk up to the oak tree. You sit down at the bottom. You look up to the leaves. You can see the blue sky above. You can hear the birds in the trees. And they write their own meditation and then bring it back and give it to somebody else in the classroom to try. It's a relatively simple activity, but a very nice one. And as I say, if you want to know how that works, then again, look at the video that we recorded a couple of weeks ago. So there are the links. To learn more about teaching English in the outdoors, see Green Action ELT, there's a link there, and the video is the one of my session a couple of weeks ago there. And that's it. I did warn you this was going to be fairly information heavy and top down, so I hope you don't mind, and I hope you found something useful there. If you want to contact me, you've got any, you know, if you have any reason to contact me personally, then there is my email address. And the slides are available from that link there. So thank you everyone for listening. And thank you, I'd just like at this stage to thank the small team behind Green Action ELT, because this has really been a sort of magpie exercise based on everything that's at the Green Action ELT website. And all the ideas there are the result of years of thinking about these things and how we can do them better. So people like Helen have done lots of research into water and transport and all that kind of thing, and that's all found its way onto the website. So thank you to everybody in the small team that is Green Action ELT. I couldn't have come up with all of these ideas here without all of your input as well.